Well, first up, the day's market action. The Wall Street ending largely lower today as metal stocks remained a major drag. So we saw the Nifty and the sensex down over 0.5%, but the broader market did outperform with the mid-cap index soaring close to 1%. Metal stocks taking it on the chin, the index fell over 2%. Meanwhile, the rupee posting its biggest one-day fall against the dollar since September of last year. The rupees ended at 82.73 against the greenback. Muted markets and a strong dollar weighed on the rupee. Sustained foreign fund outflows and firm crude oil prices further dented investor sentiment. While speaking of sentiment, the sell-off in the Adani Group stocks continues for the third week. Since the Hindenburg report was released, the Adani Group has lost about 9.4 lakh crore rupees in market capitalization. At its peak, the conglomerate's market cap was at nearly 25 lakh crores. Before the Hindenburg report became public, in January, the market cap was less than 20 lakh crore rupees. Over the weekend, S&P became the first rating agency to lower the outlook on Adani Ports and Adani Enterprises from stable to negative. Taking note of the unusual stock movement, market regulator SEBI has also said that it has put in place surveillance measures to address excessive volatility. Now the Adani Group is moving to prepay $1.1 billion of its debt in a bid to allay the fears of investors. The announcement did give a boost to shares of Adani Ports, but other group stocks continued to remain under selling pressure. Vivek is standing by with the latest move of Adani prepaying some debt. Vivek, take us through the details.
Well, that's absolutely right. So in a press release that came in from the company, some very important details coming in, stating that the Adani Group promoters have actually posted almost $1.1 billion in order to reduce the percentage of pledged holdings in 3 of their group companies, and this is going to be ahead of the expected maturity, that is September 2024. So now, 3 group companies will see the percentage of pledged shareholding by the promoters come down. And when you're talking about Adani Transmission, the promoters are looking to reduce the pledge by close to 1.4%, in Adani Green almost by 3%, and very interestingly in Adani Ports by 12%. Now what is more interesting is the fact that, especially if you're talking about Adani Ports, where they're looking to reduce their the proportion of pledged shareholding by 12%, the total percentage of promoter holding pledged at the end of the December quarter was only close to around 17.3%. So a significant chunk of the pledged shareholding is being reduced. When it comes to Adani Green Energy, 3% out of the 4.36%, and when it comes to Adani Transmission, 1.4% of the total 6.6% pledge will be reduced.
Vivek, many thanks for joining us. And let's stay with the Adani Group crisis. Professor Ashwath Damodharan, an expert on valuation, believes the fair value of Adani Enterprises share is 945 rupees. This implies a 40% downside from the current market price. Speaking exclusively to CNBC-TV18, Professor Damodharan said the Adani Group could be risking its core competencies in the effort to debunk the allegations made by the Hindenburg report. Take a look.
What I see in this business is a company that invests in infrastructure investments, which have long gestation periods, require huge capital expenditures up front, and are not that profitable. It's the nature of the business. So when I approached the valuation of Adani Enterprises, that's what I brought to the game. I had to bring in the fact that this is not a business that can generate 30% margins or 40% margins. You're going to be lucky to get to 6 or 7% margins. The global average for infrastructure companies is about 4.8 to 5%. So at 7%, I'm already pushing the limit on what those margins will be. That part of the Hindenburg report, I could not quite get why they were making such a big deal. I don't think it's the market cap that's been pushing the debt. This is something that predates the jump in the market cap. This is just it's in the company's DNA. They don't like to issue equity. That's the reality. And it's like pulling teeth to get them to even give up 1%, 2% of their holding. And I think, in a sense, it's a bit of a tragedy, because I think this is a company with competencies, which has something really good to bring to the economy. And I think in the zeal to preserve control, they might be risking all those core competencies.
Well, that is Ashwath Damodharan there on the valuation risk that the Adani Group faces. Now, lawmakers of opposition parties protesting outside Parliament against the government and the Adani Group, the conglomerate, has seen a major stock rout since that Hindenburg Group report levelled allegations of alleged stock manipulation, accounting fraud, amongst others. The government has so far not yielded to the opposition's demand of a joint parliamentary panel or a Supreme Court monitored probe into the operations of the Adani Group. Both houses adjourned for the day amid sloganeering and protests. The Congress party has also staged protests outside LIC and SBI offices across India.
सरकार नहीं, मोदी जी पूरी कोशिश करेंगे कि पार्लियामेंट में अदानी जी का डिस्कशन ना हो जाए। लाखों करोड़ रुपए का भ्रष्टाचार हुआ है, जो हिंदुस्तान का इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर कैप्चर किया गया है, उसके बारे में डिस्कशन हो और अदानी जी के पीछे कौन सी शक्ति है वो भी देश को पता लग जाए।
आपको जो मुद्दा उठाना, अडानी हो, अंबानी हो, टाटा हो, बिरला, जो उठाना हो आप उठाइए ना। आप प्रेसिडेंशियल एड्रेस में तो डिबेट में भाग लेकर अपनी बात बोल सकते हैं, लेकिन इन लोगों के पास कोई मुद्दा नहीं है, इसलिए हाउस को उन्होंने एडजर्न करा दिया। तो अपनी बात कहने से ये लोग वंचित हो रहे हैं और हाउस को अनावश्यक जो है और डिसरप्ट कर रहे हैं।
Now, market regulator SEBI has sought updated details of foreign portfolio investors from bank units for greater clarity on registration and beneficial ownership. Prashant is standing by with more details. Prashant, what exactly has the regulator asked for?
Well, thanks very much for that. Now, what we understand from industry sources is that SEBI has written an email to banks who deal with FPI registration as a process. This email was sent out last Friday evening with a focus basically on two issues. One is FPI registration and the second is beneficial ownership. Let me explain this a bit. So what is SEBI saying? SEBI is asking what are called designated depository participants to reach out to their foreign portfolio investors by the 31st of March 2023. Designated depository participants, DDPs, by the way, are units within banks who deal with the specific function of FPI registration. So SEBI is asking these entities, DDPs, to in turn ask their FPIs who are registered with them to give them the updated beneficial owner details by the 30th of September this year. So there are very clear timelines here from the regulator. The SEBI communication says that if this is not done by the 30th of September, these FPIs would then become ineligible to continue their registration, which would then, according to the email, mean that they will have to sell their holdings, liquidate their holdings by the 31st of March 2024. I mean, I would like to add here that we've written to SEBI for an official comment and we are awaiting a response from them. Now, to explain this issue with some examples, right? As I said, SEBI is focusing on two things. Number one is registration of FPIs. If I can sort of use an example, if there is, for example, a German bank which is a unit based out of Hong Kong or Singapore or anywhere else which invests as an FPI in Indian markets, SEBI is saying that the legal entity in this particular example, in this particular case, is the German bank, right? And not the unit operating out of Hong Kong or Singapore. Number two, the second issue the SEBI's communication touches upon is identification of beneficial ownership. So if there is a FPI investing in India, and there is no entity which can be clearly identified as the owner, the threshold for to be considered an owner is having 10% or more invested in a fund, or control. If these two criteria are not met and a natural kind of owner or controller cannot be identified, then the beneficial owner has to be identified as a very senior person and not a junior person or someone managing money, etc. It has to be at a managing partner kind of level. All in all, clear communication from SEBI that it wants to know the end beneficial owner of FPIs, and there are clear timelines given by which it wants this information as well. As I said, we've written to SEBI and are awaiting a response from them. Back to you.
Prashant, many thanks for joining us. Oil prices rallying after falling over 8% last week as fears of a recession outweighed signs of a demand recovery in China. The IEA expects half of global oil demand growth this year will come from China, which would force OPEC nations to reassess their output policy. So that is the key as far as crude is concerned. On to a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. We learned from sources the government will oppose Vedanta's subsidiary 8ZL's buyout of Vedanta's global zinc assets. The government will reiterate its objections at the 8ZL AGM. Sapna joins us now with more in this exclusive. Sapna, what exactly is the government objecting to?
Well, we have very clearly given to understand that the government has opposed the buyout of international zinc assets by Hindustan Zinc, which is a subsidiary of Vedanta, and they're going to spend almost like what, $2.98 billion. The government has really raised objection to this, and most likely in the AGM, the objection will be raised once again. In the government's view, this could be a violation on two grounds. Number one, at the board meeting itself, when there were 3 government directors from the Ministry of Mines, they had opposed this at that point in time, but despite that, the exchange filing was done. That basically translates into violation of rights of minority shareholder, because government holds over 29% in HZL. Second, this could also mean a contravention of the corporate governance norms. All in all, till this matter is now resolved, the government may not go ahead with this HZL issue. They had to do an OFS before March end. So that hangs in balance now till this matter is resolved. But the government at its end is extremely clear that, despite objecting at the board level itself, the exchange filing happened. 3 government directors from Ministry of Mines opposed it. Nothing happened. Now in the AGM, they are hopeful that, this matter will actually be dropped. The government is trying to make sure that this deal actually doesn't happen. And if you keep in mind the numbers involved, almost $3 billion, maybe the hope was that something could have come in terms of the OFS itself. So all in all, we have to wait and watch and see what really happens on HZL.
Sapna, many thanks for joining us. That's a CNBC-TV18 exclusive. Time for us to head into a short break. But up next, aircraft manufacturing giant Boeing bets big on India's component ecosystem as global supply chain issues linger. That exclusive when we return. Aircraft manufacturing giant Boeing is betting big on India's component ecosystem as global supply chain issues continue to linger. Speaking exclusively to CNBC-TV18, the president of Boeing International, Brendan Nelson, said supply chain issues will remain for the next 1 to 2 years. He said the company is exploring more opportunities for joint ventures in India, while Nelson didn't confirm the large order from Boeing's oldest Indian customer, Air India, but did reveal that there are some big announcements lined up at the Aero India show. Speaking about its Make in India plans, Nelson said Boeing's exports from India stood at $1 billion and will grow further as the company expands its footprint. Take a look.
And particularly for India, we're forecasting that over the next 20 years that India will need about 2,200 more aircraft for its commercial fleet, and that's a conservative estimate, so the growth is very significant. Essentially doing everything that we can to keep our supply chains going. One of the things that's really important is that we make sure that our production rates are able to be supplied confidently by the supply chains. The supply chain issues will continue to challenge the industry at least for the next 1, perhaps 2 years. We, Boeing, have 5,000 Indians employed by Boeing in India. We've got 300 suppliers in our supply chain in India at the moment. We invest $1 billion US a year with those suppliers, and that has a multiplier effect of supporting around 14,000 Indians. Very focused on India, and you'll see in the near and medium term we'll be making further announcements about our suppliers who come from India. We will be and are exploring further opportunities for co-development in India that meet the needs of India and of Boeing. I can't be too specific about them at the moment for reasons I hope you would appreciate. We currently have about $1 billion US in exports from India that we have produced here, and we anticipate that that is going to grow.
You can catch the full interview with Brendan Nelson at 5 p.m. and 7:30 p.m. right here on CNBC TV18.